Chapter 8 is over persuasion. This is how you get someone to do what you want them to do, or how someone else gets you to do what they want you to do. It's tactics that we use, it's the paths we use, it's the different methods depending on who's trying to persuade or the person they're trying to persuade. So let's get into Chapter 8, Persuasion. So there are really two paths to persuading someone, two major pathways. And that was talked about in the elaboration likelihood model. This is a model of persuasion maintaining that there are two different routes to persuasion, the central route and the peripheral route. So it's very important that you remember these two routes because a lot of things build off of that. So first off, the central route is where people think carefully and deliberately about the content of a persuasive message, attending to its logic and the strength of its arguments, as well as to related evidence and principles. This is the kind of persuasion you want to utilize if someone is knowledgeable on the topic, if it's relevant to that person's life, and you need to worry about the quality of the argument, the quality of the logic, the quality of the information that you have in your persuasive message. So you want to make sure that using the central route, like say for me, I have my master's in psychology. I've been teaching psychology for 3 years, especially social psychology, biopsychology, classes like that. So what I say, I'm an expert, like someone that has their PhD and has been teaching for 30 years, maybe not, but it's something that I am very knowledgeable about. It's something that's personally relevant to me. So the realm of psychology is because I teach it, because I'm constantly reading upon, the latest theories and the latest ideas. And so if I may be looking at what textbook I want to use, someone's trying to persuade me to use a different textbook, well, then they are going to need to have a very strong and logical argument with good information, because it's something that I know a lot about, and it's something that's personally relevant to me. It's something that I care about. I care about what kind of information I'm giving my students and the kind of information I'll be teaching off of. So using the central route of persuasion is what's important for people that care about the topic, that know a lot about the topic, and care about the quality of the argument. But on the other hand, we have the peripheral route. This is where people attend to relatively easy to process superficial cues related to a persuasive message, such as its length or the expertise or attractiveness of the source of the message. So this is for someone that maybe doesn't know a ton about a topic or doesn't really care either way. It's not really personally relevant. Maybe the person that is trying to persuade is attractive or famous or has some kind of expertise in it, which is going to sway the person to believe what they say or go along with what they say. Or someone might look to the consensus. What are other people saying about this? Is it popular? Is it not popular? Do people tend to like this? What are the reviews? So this could be for me what book I want to read. I don't really care. Sometimes I just want a good book to read or a good show to watch. I don't really care what it is. If there's someone, maybe an actor or actress I really like in it, well, then that famous person kind of persuaded me to watch it. A lot of people say that they like it. So it's not something that I'm really gonna delve too much into. I'm not an expert on TV or books or anything. But if someone says that I should watch it, I'll probably watch it. I don't really care either way. It's very easy to persuade using the peripheral route if that's the means of which that person can be persuaded, meaning they're going to be easily persuaded, use the peripheral route. If they're not going to be easily persuaded, use the central route, is essentially what these two routes are saying. What the elaboration likelihood model is saying is someone that knows a lot about it, central route. Someone that doesn't know a lot about it, peripheral route. Okay, so what determines whether we will engage in central or peripheral processing in response to a persuasive message? So how motivated are you, or how able are you to receive a persuasive message? So first is our motivation. How much time and energy are we willing to put into making a decision? So when the message has personal consequences, we're more likely to go to the central route and carefully work through the arguments and relevant information. If it's something about maybe your health or your safety or your money. That's something that maybe you want to sink a little bit more time and effort into working through. And so you're going to want someone that has a lot of good information and a strong argument. It's not going to take a celebrity spokesperson to persuade you to trying this new medication or whatever it is. You're going to need some good evidence on why you're going to do what someone wants you to do. So first is motivation. Next is your ability, the processing the message in depth. So when we have sufficient cognitive resources and time, we're able to process persuasive messages more deeply. We're able to think through it a little bit more, kind of weigh the pros and cons or whatever it is. Also, the more we know, the more thoughtfully we're able to scrutinize a persuasive message. Now, I don't know much about physics or anything like that. So if someone were to give me an article about physics and at the end tell me to vote yes or no, I'm I don't really know. I don't have the information, I don't have the knowledge base already to really have an opinion. And so I'm going to look to someone that knows more than I do to kind of, which is when we talk about the peripheral route, expertise. I'm going to look to someone that knows better than I do to maybe kind of nudge me in the right direction. However, if we're talking about the realm of psychology and someone gives me an article and tells me to vote yes or no after reading this article, well, that's something I'm going to be able to think deeply on because I already have a knowledge base in that field. And so I can think and process thoughtfully through what information I'm taking in. And so it's going to change whether or not I'm easily persuaded by this article or this message that I'm receiving. So when my ability to process this is low, if I don't have sufficient cognitive resources and time, we're more apt to rely on easy to process peripheral cues associated with the message. We need a more shallow message. We need something that's straight to the point to tell us what to do because we don't have either the knowledge capability or the time to process through and make a decision on whether or not we're going to be persuaded on this message. So we've got a few elements of persuasion. We've got source characteristics. So this is the person giving the persuasive message. We've got got message characteristics. So what is it about the message itself that makes it persuasive or not? And then we've got audience characteristics. What is it about the people receiving the message that makes them persuaded or not? So let's get into the first one, source characteristics. These are characteristics of the person who delivers a persuasive message, such as attractiveness, credibility, and certainty. So first off, with attractiveness, attractive sources are particularly persuasive when the message isn't personally important to the person hearing it, and when those people don't have much knowledge in the domain. Attractive sources can lead to persuasion through the central route by increasing the favorability of people's effortful thinking about the position being endorsed. So attractiveness can help on both realms, but especially the peripheral route. It can add persuasion to the central route, or it can be the basis of the peripheral route of persuasion. So let's say Kim Kardashian years ago would she would try to promote those tummy teas to help you lose weight. Well, people that didn't really know much about weight loss and really loved Kim Kardashian and knew how influential she was would probably buy it because they don't know much about that domain, the domain of weight loss and health. And they see Kim Kardashian with an awesome figure and how popular she is and how rich she is. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do what she says to do. So attractiveness can play a role in the decisions that we make. Next is credibility. The sheer credibility of a message's source can sway opinions under circumstances that promote the peripheral route to persuasion. When the audience is highly motivated and able to think carefully, source credibility can be taken as a strong argument in favor of moving toward the position the credible source is endorsing. So first, credibility can be the basis of a peripheral route of persuasion. So that could be, I'm an expert in this. I have, credible sources. I have a lot of education in this field. So just the fact that that person is an expert, people will say, okay, I'm not even going to worry about this information you're giving me. I'm in. Or credibility can add to the central route of persuasion by adding another layer to the credibility, to the strong logic and the strong information, strong argument of the persuasive message. So when the audience is highly motivated and able to think carefully, having the person giving them the persuasive message that is also credible only adds to the strength of the persuasive message. According to the sleeper effect, this is an effect that occurs when a persuasive message from an unreliable source initially exerts little influence, but later causes attitudes to shift. So people begin to dissociate the source of the message from its content. So there was a movement that happened years ago that said that vaccines cause autism. It wasn't really much of a big deal. Like, not a lot of people heard about it. It was kind of knocked out before it really spread a ton. So it initially exerted little influence over the whole population. But then some celebrities, such as Jenny McCarthy, started to look into this guy's fabricated study and started proclaiming that vaccines cause autism, which later caused attitudes to shift about vaccines and led a whole anti-vax movement of sorts through a lot of communities and through a lot of, and not to put down quote unquote crunchy moms and crunchy families, but the more crunchy side of families. There are definitely some things I'm crunchy about, but it started to take root in a lot of communities. And so that's an example of the sleeper effect, an effect that occurs when a persuasive message from an unreliable source. So this guy even went back and discredited his work, but it was too late. It had already grabbed a hold of the right type of people to spread this persuasive message, even though it's from an unreliable source. So it initially exerts little influence, but later causes attitudes to shift. And so people begin to dissociate the source of the message from its content. So people stopped realizing, they dissociated that the information that this message started from was from a fabricated study, was from a non-replicable and non-verifiable study. And so they separated in their brains, without even realizing it, separated the fact that that information came from a fabricated study from the content in the message, which was vaccines cause autism. Okay, well then I'm not vaccinating any of my children. So that's an example of the sleeper effect. Okay, and then the last of the source characteristics is certainty. Sources who express their views with certainty and confidence tend to be more persuasive, of course. So if you're choosing a financial advisor, you need to do your taxes, you're trying to look for some kind of investment plan, whatever it is. And one person says, yeah, I mean, it's kind of 50-50 on whether or not this plan will work for you. It can be pretty risky. I'm really not that sure. Versus someone you're interviewing for the job, for you to take on, they say, I am 100% sure this is going to work out. This has had a great success rate in the past, and I'm very sure that this is going to be a good investment for your money. Well, who are you more likely to choose to be your financial advisor? The person that's more certain, because you would rather have someone that is 100% certain than someone who is 50-50 or even 75-25. You want someone who is certain and makes you feel more confident in the decision that you're making if they are confident in what they're telling you. Okay, next on to message characteristics. What is it about the message itself that makes it more persuasive to you? So message characteristics are aspects or content of a persuasive message, including the quality of the evidence and the explicitness of its conclusions. So first is message quality. Messages are of higher quality when they appeal to the core value of the audience, straightforward, clear, and logical, explain to the audience the consequences of taking action. Messages are more persuasive when the sources argue against their own self-interest. So you're not going to um, go to, you're not going to have someone come and speak to a church full of, say, Christians and preach Buddhism. Well, that's not something that is appeals to the core values of the audience. That's not something that is necessarily straightforward to them, or even clear and logical. So you're not speaking to the correct audience. So your message is not right. Your message is not something that's going to be beneficial to the people in the crowd. So why are they going to care what you have to say? So you need to be sure that you are tailoring your message to the people that you're speaking to, because if your message does not have any quality to it, they're not going to care what you have to say. And then, yes, messages are more persuasive when sources argue against their own self-interest, because why else would you be saying something to someone if it wasn't true? If it also goes, why would you say something that's not true and then something that is also against your own self-interest? That doesn't make any sense. Why would I try to tell you to buy this thing that could put me out of business? Say I'm an owner of a business that sells something, and I tell you another place where you could go that's better and cheaper. Why on earth would I tell you that if it's not true? Because it's against my self-interest. Why would I also lie about that? That doesn't make any sense. So the message quality is important in how persuasive it is. Next is its vividness, or how memorable it is. So when information is vivid, colorful, interesting, and memorable, it tends to be more effective. It won't matter how, it won't be persuasive if you can't remember what you were persuaded about. Vivid but misleading information can often trump more valid and relevant information that's not as flashy. You need to remember it. There are commercials that you remember. It's something that was interesting or funny or memorable, whatever it was, or some kind of information, maybe a quote someone told you or a piece of advice they gave you because it interested you. It was memorable. And according to the identifiable victim effect, this is an effect in which the tendency to be more moved by the vivid plight of a single individual than by a more abstract number of people. People are more willing to donate to a cause when an appeal is made on behalf of an identifiable individual than on behalf of an anonymous or statistical victim. So if something is memorable, you're more likely to take action. It's more likely to stick with you for longer. So let's say, you see one of those commercials, in the arms of the angels, and they say, donate to animals that need your help. Well, if that's all they say, they don't show any pictures or anything. It's like, okay, whatever. But when you see those puppy dogs with their big puppy dog eyes that are malnourished and they just need some love and comfort and some food, and they need donations to help, or same with, any kids, they say 50 cents a day to help feed starving children around the world. You might be a little moved, but when you see those faces of those gaunt children that need food and that need water and need shelter, you are moved a lot more. You have a face to the problem. You have an identifiable individual rather than an anonymous or statistical victim. So you're much likely to donate or to take action to help out when you can identify who needs your help. Okay, think about those big puppy dog eyes, or those sweet kittens, or those little malnourished children. When you see their faces, well, that makes it a lot more real to you and a lot more persuasive. And that, because it's memorable to you, you remember those faces are embedded in your brain. So that is a part of why the vividness of a message makes it more or less persuasive. Fear can play a big role in whether or not you're persuaded to do something. Intense fear can disrupt the careful, thoughtful processing of the message, thus reducing the chances of long-lasting attitude change. If someone can't, thoughtfully process something to make a clear decision, then then it's going to be more through the peripheral route of persuasion than through the central route. The right kind of fear might heighten people's motivation to attend to the message, thus increasing the likelihood of enduring attitude change. So the wrong kind of fear makes people kind of go a little berserk and they can't really thoughtfully process anything. But then the right kind of fear can motivate people to change. So it's advisable to make ad campaigns frightening, but make sure they include clear, concrete information about what steps to take to address the source of the fear. So if you make someone fearful in the wrong way and you don't tell them what to do next, then they just feel like they're kind of like a chicken with their head cut off, running around just saying, feeling afraid, not knowing what to do. But if you give someone a little bit of fear in the right way, and then you tell them, here's what you do to fix it or to prevent it or whatever, then that gives them the ammo they need to go and do. So for example, if someone's trying to get you to do something about global climate change, you're not just going to say the world is going to end because people are stupid and they don't pick up trash off, people are stupid because they emit so much CO2 and it's causing the ozone to collapse and then we're all going to die. Well, that's not telling me what to do. That's just scaring me. But if you say, here are the things that you just say, here are the statistics about global warming. Here are the outlooks for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. But here are some things we can do to slow it down. We can recycle more. We can use less, fossil fuels. We can do this. We can do that. Here are some steps that you can do, not what, the super rich and famous people can do that have a lot more influence. Here's what the everyday person can do to help mitigate some of these risks. And so that gives people a little bit of fear, but then also it's enough fear to nudge them in the right direction when you give them a direction in which to go. When you say, okay, start recycling, start planting, start planting more trees, start doing this, start doing that. Well, those are things that I can do right now in my individual life. That's going to spur me more into action than just scaring me and saying the world's going to end. Okay. Next, culture can play a huge role in whether or not we're persuaded. It's important to tailor a message to fit the norms, the values, and the outlook of the cultural group of your audience. How could tailoring a message in an ad to an independent culture be different from tailoring a message to an interdependent culture? Just something to think about. It's not an assignment or anything like that. We do have a journal over persuasion. It's not this though, but it's important that to know that different cultures can influence the way that people perceive information and accept information. So wouldn't you tailor your message to fit the culture of the people you're going to be speaking to? Yes. Okay, and lastly, the audience characteristics. So the characteristics of those who receive a personal message, including the need for cognition, mood, and age. So what is it about the audience that makes it easier or more difficult for them to be persuaded? So first is the need for cognition. This is the degree to which people like to think deeply about things. People with a high need for cognition are more persuaded by high quality arguments and are more relatively unmoved by peripheral cues of persuasion. Kind of like I talked about earlier. If someone knows a lot, has a strong knowledge base about a certain topic and someone's trying to persuade them about that topic, well, it's going to take a more logical and strong argument than someone that doesn't know much about the topic. So people who are deep thinkers, who like to think deeply and process through things, they are going to need a stronger argument to persuade them. Okay. Next is mood. More pessimistic messages tend to prompt greater message processing in sad or depressed people. So kind of the mood you're in is the type of message you're willing to perceive, because that's how you're perceiving the world at that moment. Then also uplifting, optimistic messages prompt greater message processing in happy people. People that are in good moods, that are happy, they're not going to want to process a negative message because that doesn't go well with the way they're viewing the world at the moment. So you need to adhere your message to the mood of the crowd that you're speaking to, the audience you're speaking to. Age. So who do you think is more likely to be persuaded by messages? Younger people or older people? Or does it depend on The topic. I think it 100% depends on the topic. There are some topics in which younger people care more about, so it's more personally relevant to them. They're more knowledgeable about, so it's going to require um, more of the central route of persuasion, a stronger, more information laced argument. It's going to take more to persuade them. However, there are some topics in which older people know more about, they're more invested in. So it's not going to take as much to persuade the younger person on those kinds of messages. How confident or not we feel about the thoughts we have in response to a persuasive message can also come from nonverbal cues. So if we think about whoever's giving this persuasive message, if their posture is upright and they are commanding the stage and it's whenever someone has good posture and good body language and good tone of voice, if I'm talking like this and I know you can't see me, but I'm sitting straight up in my chair at my desk and I'm using great hand gestures and I'm really driving home the point. And maybe I'm going to talk with more inflection in my voice because I really, really, really want to drive this home. And I'm going to get up out of my seat and I'm going to punch this message home. Okay, well, that's going to come across a little bit better than if you were seeing me and I was sitting at my desk and I'm talking monotone and I'm talking really quiet and there's no inflection in my voice. And this is going to be really boring to talk or listen to for the next 30 minutes or so. So you probably don't want to receive a persuasive message from me because what would be persuasive from this kind of person? I'm slouched in my chair, I'm sitting down, I have my arms across my chest, and I'm speaking in a monotone voice that's really, really quiet and has no inflection whatsoever. So, yeah, what do you think about that? It's going to be a lot easier to pay attention and be persuaded by someone who's confident, who has great body language, who's using gestures, who has a clear tone of voice, who is speaking straight to you. So, how confident or not we feel about the thoughts we have in response to persuasive appeal can also come from nonverbal cues from the person who is relaying this persuasive message. How does the media play a role in persuasion? How powerful are the media in shaping our attitudes? There are indirect ways the media can influence us. Specific advertisements may not succeed at getting us to buy specific products, but they could still sway us to believe that personal happiness lies in materialistic pursuits. So this advertisement about a designer purse may not get you to buy that specific purse, maybe because it's $5,000, but maybe that's not something you necessarily want, but it leads you to feel unhappy about the purse you've got, and then you want to go drop $100 on a new one. So it can still persuade you, even if it's not persuading you exactly the way they're wanting to, it can still persuade you to do something different. Political ads may not get us to vote for a particular candidate, but they may lead us to conclude that the country is going downhill. So, especially with these these slam advertisements, political messages that are talking smack on the opponent. Well, let's say you don't like the person that's speaking on the TV anyway, and then they're slamming the person that you're maybe leaning towards. It may not get you to vote for that particular candidate, but it might persuade you to think that, well, crap, there's no good option. This country is going downhill. And that can lead to agenda control, efforts of the media to select certain events and topics to emphasize, thereby shaping which issues and events people think are important. This happens all the time. The prominence given to certain issues in the news media, crime, traffic congestion, or economic downturns is correlated with the public's perception that these issues are important. And I talk about this in general psychology. We just went through this, the availability heuristic. This is a way of thinking and a way of decision making. So kind of persuasion, where if you are able to readily come up with in your brain an example of something occurring, then that makes you think that it's very common. So if you are constantly seeing news reports of crime and economic downturns, well, you're going to constantly be having examples of that in your brain. So you're going to think that that is happening way more often than it is. You're going to be thinking, oh my goodness, this is what I needed to turn all of my attention towards. These are the things I need to pay attention to, when really it could just be a mask for something else that they don't want you to think about. That is agenda control. And regardless of what side of the aisle you are politically, or if you're in the middle, you cannot deny that this occurs all the time. So how do we become resistant to persuasion? Our minds sometimes respond selectively to information in a way that maintains our initial point of view. Sometimes resistance to persuasion is good, sometimes it's not so good. We talked about confirmation bias a few chapters ago. That's one way we are resistant to persuasion, because we don't want to look at or take in information that is contradictory to our opinions. However, if we hear information that is contradictory to the opposing one, then we want to take all that information in. We want anything that supports our belief and does not support our the belief opposite of ours. We want something that takes down the belief, the thing we don't believe in, and that supports the thing we do believe in. So selective attention is one way. We tune into information that reinforces our attitudes, and we tune out to information that contradicts them. That is an aspect of confirmation bias, 100%. And then selective evaluation. We want to hear the weaknesses of arguments that contradict our attitudes. So these two things together pretty much encapsulate confirmation bias. Okay, selective attention and selective evaluation. According to the thought polarization hypothesis, this is a hypothesis that more extended thought about a particular issue tends to produce a more extreme, entrenched attitude. So the more you delve into, say, confirmation bias, the more you delve into constant information that supports your ideas, it's going to produce a more extreme and entrenched, which entrenched means even harder to get out. You're digging yourself a deeper trench. It's harder to get out of attitude. So that can, if you're constantly in this state of confirmation bias, well, then it's going to become a lot more difficult for someone to persuade you in the opposite direction. Knowledge and resistance. People with a lot of knowledge in a subject area are less likely to change their stance on an issue than less knowledgeable people. That goes back to the first slide, the central route of persuasion. If someone knows a lot about a topic, they're going to need an even stronger argument to persuade them the other way, because they already have information that they need on the topic to form an opinion. If someone doesn't have an opinion, or has a loose opinion because they don't know much on the topic, it's going to be a lot easier to persuade them. And then lastly, something that I want you guys to really use when it comes to anything you believe in, especially anything you believe in strongly, such as your religious beliefs, maybe some political beliefs, some moral beliefs, whatever they are, attitude inoculation, okay? Small attacks on people's beliefs that engage their pre-existing attitudes, prior commitments, and background knowledge, enabling them to counteract a subsequent larger attack and thus resist persuasion. What the heck does that mean? That means you've got a belief, okay? I'm going to say whole milk is the best milk. And I know that's a controversial subject, that some people hate milk in general. Some people hate whole milk and they just want 1% or skim milk or 2%, whatever it is. I just recently started liking whole milk, mainly in my coffee because it makes it creamier, but that is my belief. That is my belief that I'm stating for this example. Whole milk is the best kind of milk for both its taste and its nutritional value. Okay, so then I'm going to come up with, 3 to 6 counter arguments against my belief, which are things that other people may believe, which would help them believe the opposite, that maybe skim milk, let's say the opposite belief is skim milk is the best milk. So, I could have an argument that says skim milk is more thirst quenching than whole milk. Skim milk has less calories than whole milk. Skim milk is better with cereal. And I'm going to come up with all of these arguments that go against my belief that whole milk is the best milk. Okay, then I'm going to come up with arguments for my arguments. So you can say skim milk is the most thirst quenching. Well, actually, I feel the most satisfied when I drink whole milk. Okay, so that's a counter argument. And then the one that says skim milk has less calories. Well, I can say skim milk has less calories because it doesn't have as many nutrients in it. It doesn't have the good fats and vitamins that come along with animal fats in there. So that's why it has less calories. It's not as nutritionally dense. And then I come up with an argument for each one of those, because if you not only know what you believe, but you know what the people who believe against you believe, and you know how to counteract those arguments, well, then you're pretty set on knowing exactly what you believe and why you believe it. It's important to know both sides of the aisle so that you can feel even stronger in your belief. That is attitude inoculation. An inoculation is also what a vaccine is. You're getting, some vaccines at least, you're getting a small dose of a virus or bacteria so that your body knows how to build defense on it the next time you come into contact with it in the real world. So you are inoculating yourself with contrary beliefs so that the next time you are opposed, you know how to attack it. You know your brain, rather than your body knowing how to attack a virus or bacteria, your brain knows how to attack an argument against your belief. So that is attitude inoculation, and that is the best way to resist yourself to persuasion, because you become not only knowledgeable on what you believe, but become knowledgeable on what other people believe about your belief. All right, that is the end of chapter 8, and then you'll go on and do the journal for chapter 8. All right, bye.